The next section here, allow me to continue, will be the overview. So the Powercode ISP management system provides a way for you to store customer information, send invoices to customers, automatically process payments, will allow you to schedule installation times, manage tickets, shape customers' bandwidth, bill for overages, pull useful statistics from customer equipment and infrastructure, and much more. The billing server. The Powercode billing server will provide you with an administrative portal as well as a customer portal. The server will use a database to store multiple pieces of customer information, and the server will interface with the Powercode BMU to set customer speeds based on billing packages, as well as store the statistics that the BMU pulls from the equipment. The BMU. The Powercode BMU will shape customers' bandwidth, redirect customers' traffic based on billing status, and hand out IPs based on DHCP. Other functions would include throttling bandwidth based on speed limiter triggers and contract redirection. So the billing server and the BMU, how does it work? Here we have a basic example. For example, account number 43 is set to pay their bill by the 10th of every month. If the customer does not pay their bill, the Powercode billing server will send them into a delinquent status. In a delinquent status, Powercode will apply a mark to the customer's IP that will redirect their traffic once the customer hits the BMU and their route out to the internet. The customers will see a redirect page with a link to the customer portal. The customer can log in and pay their balance. Once they pay, Powercode will automatically send them to an active status, thus allowing the customer to traverse the BMU out to the internet. Configuring the billing server. So this is the first section that we'll actually jump into the billing server and navigate it. We have tried to make the configuration process as user-friendly as possible. We provide you with an explanation of what the field is looking for by hovering over the blue question mark next to that specific field. Items we can configure range from company information, invoices, installer schedules, and more. So let me go ahead and jump into the billing server and show you how we're going to be configuring some of this information. So you all are familiar with what the billing server looks like. For some of our newer users, this is usually the first task I give you after I install your server. Going ahead and looking through the config tab. Things we can configure here are Powercode users, so the people that are accessing the administrative portal. Basic system information, your company information, some features that you would like to enable or disable. Here we can enable features as well. Other things we can configure is our credit card processing gateway, e-check processing. Billing and invoices, we'll touch on this a bit. Other information we can configure as the administrator will be our add customer wizard. So we may require that every account needs to have an email address before we allow it to be created in the system. Installer schedules, dates, and times they're available during those dates. Ticket groups, I will touch on this a little bit later. Custom data fields, Powercode may not store all the information that you'd like, so you are given the ability to create your own fields, whether it be text-based or option-based, and you can dictate where they are located in the Powercode system. And then custom statuses. So, for example, you may want a status of customers you weren't able to get installed for no line of sight, maybe an example, and you'd like to show where those customers are on the map. So we do give you the ability to create those custom statuses. Automatic emails, we will dedicate a full training session to our new automatic email and invoicing system. I believe that's scheduled for next week. We do have a new system we're rolling out, so we'll talk about that during next week's training. Customer portal, we'll touch on that during this training evolution. So we do give you the ability to configure a wide range of different settings to meet your company's standards. So jumping into Powercode system. And this is why I generally give you this as a first task after we get you installed, because it's very basic information it's asking for. For example, company name, address, company contact information. Server software configuration settings, so this is a little different from company information. One might look at this and say, well, what does the master server IP mean? So we do give you the description of that to the right. For example, this should be what other pieces of equipment used to talk to the billing server. Other information we can turn on and off here would be service and controls. So auto speed limiter, we may want to enable this feature. We do that in this section. Also contract redirection. We may believe it's a good time to start rolling out contracts. We can turn that on here. And then uploading a website banner. That will show up on your customer portal and on the administrative portal, respectively. So jumping back into our slideshow, the first setting or piece of equipment, or basically the next step here, is going to be creating a BMU. So the BMU configuration process will require that we create two pieces of information: the ability for the billing server to communicate with the BMU, and the configuration file that we will push to the BMU. Showing you what that looks like, we're going to hover over the network tab over here, and then we have the BMU overview section. When I dig into the overview section, what we can see here is I do have a BMU already created, but for the sake of training, I'm going to add a new BMU. First piece of information here, it's asking you a name, just something to describe this BMU. The next piece of information will be the WAN side information. So how are we communicating with this device? First piece will be the IP address. What interface would be the WAN interface for this device? In most cases, it's going to be E0. And then a secret key. So this is just a way for the BMU to authenticate back to this billing server. In the BMU configuration section, you will be given the ability to set a secret key there as well. We will need WAN MAC address information for this BMU. Again, this is for authenticating and communicating with the device. Again, we do give you these blue question marks next to the field describing what they are. Other information that we can set here is internet download and upload rates. This is used purely for bursting. So enter the download speed of the internet connection connected to this BMU. This is to use to calculate available speed for bursting plans. Default redirect IP address. In most cases, this is going to be the IP address of the billing server. And then are we using the BMU to hand out DHCP? DHCP lease times we can change, and then some equipment may require a DHCP timestamp. If that's the case, we can enable that here. And then modes. There's two modes that we can run the BMU in. We have router and bridged mode. The differences between router and bridge mode are just that. We will treat the device as a router, so you can do things like OSPF, VLANs, different routing protocols. Bridged, we're just going to treat it as a bridge device. It's not going to show up as a hop in the network. If you are running it in router mode, we do have different redundancy built in. VRRP will allow you to set a master and slave BMU. If the master were to fail, then the traffic will be routed through the slave. And then mirror group. We give you the ability to set a BMU to configure its or to mirror configurations on multiple pieces of BMU or multiple BMUs. Excuse me. So as soon as I have this BMU configured to where I can communicate with it, I'm going to go ahead and submit it. And we will base this off of the BMU that I have created in here already. After I've submitted the BMU, it will bring me to a page that looks like this. This is where we will configure the BMU. Information we can see here is the ability to rebuild or push that configuration file, reboot the device. We do have logs here showing you any changes that have been made to the BMU and if it is rebuilding, where it is in that process. WAN side information we just created. And then subnets. So this is the configuration file, basically. We're going to create subnets that are available on specific interfaces, and then we are also going to tie DHCP ranges to those subnets. So jumping in and adding a subnet right now, we're going to give our subnet a name. So I'm going to go ahead and call this the Powercode test subnet. We can create different types of subnets, whether it be remote static, remote OSPF, or local. In this case, we will create a local subnet. We're going to give it an IP address. We're going to define the subnet mask, and then we're just going to tell Powercode what interface this subnet lives off of. If we're natting this subnet at the BMU, then we can go ahead and enter the public NAT IP. VPN to BMU. If the billing server does need to use the BMU in order to access equipment on private IP address ranges, we can set this to yes. That way the billing server will be able to do things like SNMP queries out to those devices. And then whitelist. This is our initial rollout feature. So if we whitelist this subnet, we're basically saying we don't care what status the customer is in, whether they're delinquent or not active, we're going to allow them to pass out to the internet. We can set up DNS here as well. So after I'm done creating this subnet, I'm going to go ahead and hit submit, and then it will give me my example subnet. Now we will need to tie a DHCP range to this because in this scenario we are handing out DHCP to the customers. So I'll go ahead and select a DHCP range. It's going to ask me what subnet I'm creating this DHCP range for. Go ahead and create a name for it. And then what is the first IP that we're going to allow to be handed out to the customer? And then what is the last IP? Type of subnet can either be static or dynamic. I'll give you the description here. This will generally be static for all DHCP ranges. This means the IPs in the range are statically assigned to specific MAC addresses in Powercode. If a range is set to dynamic, it means the IPs will be assigned to unauthorized users from this pool. Access point, we can tie an access point to this DHCP range. That way when we hand this off to a customer, their parent will be that specific access point. And then we can go ahead and submit. So now we basically created that configuration file for the BMU, and we can also communicate with it. If we were getting a good status back, it would mean we would be able to communicate with that device. In this case, this is a test system, so it is coming back as bad. So the next piece here will be creating a network site. So once we have the BMU configured, we will need to configure network sites that we'll associate infrastructure on. Network sites are automatically geocoded onto the network map. So basically the idea here is that we are creating a network map for you, and we will need to find where those sites are located. So jumping into network sites, I have a default location and then a hospital and a Powercode site here. I'm going to jump in and add a new network site now. Again, we will give you these fields and then the question mark explaining what information is being requested. For the site name, name it whatever you'd like. In most cases, I've seen customers do have unique names for their tower sites. Then we will need the address location. If Bing Maps is able to understand this address, we will be able to geocode it on the map. I will enter an address that's close to our proximity at the Powercode office. If for whatever reason Bing Maps is unable to geocode this address, then we can go ahead and uncheck automatic geocode and enter the lat and long individually. We have the ability to view this network site on the map, and then we will set the height for this site. So if it is a tower location, we will set how tall it is in feet. Is it a tower? Is it a silo? Is it infrastructure hanging off of a building, a house? You dictate what this site is. So in our case, it will be a tower site. Enabling and disabling is basically decommissioning or not. So if at any point this tower were to become decommissioned, we may want to disable it so we're not showing it on that map anymore. And then any notes that you deem necessary to keep on this specific tower site. So after I create the tower site, the next piece is going to be creating infrastructure that lives at this site. So I'll use the hospital, for example. Let me view the details and equipment associated with this. So again, that information we just filled up. And then any associated equipment, so infrastructure located at this site. So adding a piece of infrastructure is very similar to adding a piece of equipment on a customer account. We'll just ask you more in-depth information. So we'll have a naming convention. Go ahead and name it whatever you'd like. So backhaul. Where does this backhaul live? What site? Is it the default network location, Powercode, or hospital? And then go ahead and enter the MAC address for this device. Again, MAC addresses are purely for DHCP reservations. And then if we were not selecting a DHCP range, then we can say that this subnet lives somewhere off of the BMU on ETH1, and then we may want to statically assign an IP address for this infrastructure. Otherwise, you can select a DHCP range, and then simply leave the IP address field blank. How are we monitoring this device, whether it be ICMP, SNMP, or both? And then the SNMP community string. So if you'd like to monitor this, have some SNMP probes going out to this device, we will need the SNMP community string. What version SNMP is this device using? And then again, any notes that we deem necessary for this piece of equipment. So in most cases, when you're creating a piece of equipment on a customer account, that's about it as far as the information it asks for. But with infrastructure, we're also asking you some more in-depth information. So what category is this device in? Is it a backhaul, bridge, CPE? A device type, who makes it? We'll see, say it's a Cambium device, and then the frequency that it's on. We can go ahead and add that device. We will get into in-depth network monitoring, probes, and notifiers on Thursday, so I'll stay away from that in this training scenario. So, we created infrastructure. We already discussed this. And then after that, we will talk about the network map. So now that we have our BMU network sites and infrastructure created, we will produce a network map based on the information that you have entered. So as you can see in our screenshot below here, we do have a network map. We have some tower sites that are coming back showing green or good. So they are being monitored, and we are getting a good response from them. You can see green backhaul links from these towers, and then we do have red pieces of red infrastructure pieces, and then red backhaul links here. That means they're either down or bad. So after that, we basically have the BMU in place. We have infrastructure defined at our tower sites. Next, we'll want to create a customer account, and we can pre-qualify these customers. I'll show you that as we move forward here. Before we do that, though, I'd like to create a service showing you what that creation process looks like. So this next step will be creating accounts for your customers. The information entered here will help us pre-qualify customers for services based on the location of your network sites. Before we create an account, we will create a service. Services are located in Item Services. As you can see here, I have 3 types of services created: one-time charges, overages, and monthly internet services. Jumping into the rural broadband service. Many of you are familiar with this, but I will go over it. Description of the service, in this case rural broadband, maybe our 3 meg, 12 meg service. We'll give it a price, and then if we wanted to override taxes, we can do that here. So maybe it's 10% for this service. We can tie predefined tax types to this service. Tax exempt amounts. I know in Texas they're exempt on the first $25 of service. So you just enter that information here. Upload download speeds. We are setting the speeds on the internet service. So as soon as we add this to the account, we're not only updating how much they're paying monthly, but we are updating the speeds immediately as well. We can set burst speeds. Monthly megabyte caps if we'd like. You can tie contracts to the services and then define what groups these are available on. So as long as I'm happy with the way the service looks, I can go ahead and submit it. The other service I'll show you here will be our one-time charge. Basically that same information we saw in the monthly internet service. The only things that change here is this has no functionality, so it's asking for a lot less information. Basically it's going to be the description and the price. We'll show you some stuff we can do with this when we get into the billing section. So now that I have my services defined, the next step will be creating a customer account. Now, in the config tab, which we touched on earlier, you do, as the administrator, have the ability to require certain information here. So you may require that everybody that creates an account in Powercode needs to take down Social Security number information, email addresses, and phone numbers. If I go ahead and go to Complete Setup, it'll tell me what information is being required. So for the sake of the test, let me go ahead and enter some test information here. So we will use the email address to generate the username for the customer. Now, as soon as the customer is switched to active, we will email out the customer portal access information. Other information we can set here is whether or not the customer was referred by anybody, Social Security number, different account types. And here I have a custom field that I created. So, for example, if you were to create that on the account creation page, it may be a salesperson that you require they enter their name, or a driver's license number, for example. So it's basically just text-based. We do have options as well. So if you had 3 salespeople and you had the sales field, you can select the drop-down and select between the 3 that you indicated when you created the custom field. The next piece of information that we're going to require is going to be the location for this customer. So again, we will geocode this on the network map and point the customer to the closest tower location. If for whatever reason Bing is unable to understand it, go ahead and enter lat long information. So as you can see, some of you are familiar with this. We can point the customer to the closest tower. Based on the frequencies at this tower site, we'll be able to select through them. In this case, there is only one frequency, which happens to be 2.4. We can raise the customer height here as well. So if we believe that they're unable to get service at the height of 20 feet, assuming that's the height of their roof, we may want to see what it would look like with a 10-foot pole out there. So now while we have the customer on the phone, we can tell them, no, we can't get you service at 20 feet, but if you had extra equipment, we could, and they can either accept or decline at that point. And then the installer can go out with the right pieces of equipment the first time. Next step, we'll be adding those services to the customer account. I'll select that monthly internet service that we created earlier, and then my one-time charge, which in this case is a daily rate, but more realistically it may be an installation charge, price or charges for equipment. The install section, you would have already predefined installation times and dates. We will show you them on the map or on the calendar below here. Select a date that the installer is available, schedule the customer, and then any notes that you deem necessary to put on this installation, so 10-foot pole. And the final piece will be the billing section. So in the configure section, we do have the ability to default these settings. So we may say that the billing cycle day is going to be on the 3rd for everybody. So when I'm coming through creating these new accounts, this would automatically be set to the 3rd. Talking about these here shortly, bill cycle day will be the day that we will generate charges on the account, generate invoices, email those invoices out to the customer. Months of prepayment, you may have a customer that says, I'd really like to pay you 6 months in advance. I don't want to worry about paying my bill every month. Here we can set this to 6. The next time we generate an invoice, it will show 6 months worth of charges. Bill due by date will show up to the customer on the invoice, telling them that their bill is due by this date. It's not the 15th of the month. It's 15 days after the 1st in this case. And then any grace period we want to keep in the back end there. So basically we're saying we're not shutting them off by the 16th. We're going to give them 5 more days to pay their bill. Invoice preference, whether it be email, print, or both. Format, PDF, HTML, and then whether or not we're providing a detail page. So as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go ahead and complete this setup. That'll bring you to my test account that I created earlier. In most cases, this account will be in a lead status. If I schedule an install, they will be in a pre-install status, so they're still waiting to be set to active. As most of you are familiar, the installer will go out, we'll enter equipment, and then we'll switch them to active. So now that we have created the account, the next step we will talk about is creating a ticket on the account. So we're going to show you how to take full advantage of the Powercode ticket system. Here we will create different ticket categories, types, and set priority levels. So a lot of the times I'll have customers come to me and say, I didn't know you had that feature, I didn't realize you could do that. So that's one of the reasons why we're touching the ticketing piece today. So you're all familiar with customer accounts. If you have any specific questions on the information that's being shown here, go ahead and send those into support@powercode.com. Jumping into the tickets, before we get started, let's go ahead and navigate to Configure and then Ticket section. Different things we're able to create here in the Ticket section are going to be different types of tickets, categories of tickets, priority levels. Then we're going to show you how to take full advantage of the ticket handler group section. We may want to send our ticket updates to the customers by default. You can select not to as well. Different types of tickets. Here we have a custom type and a generic type. But I may want to implement a billing type of ticket or a network type of ticket within my company. Just gives us the ability to separate these tickets. So for example, I'm going to create a network type and then a billing type. And then as far as categories, it may be a billing type, but the category may be late payments or internet access, email issues, various different types you can use. So just going to look at some of the issues that you're taking today, maybe create different categories for them. And then different ticket types as well. A number of priorities. So this is purely just a number. We can set different priority levels. So in this case, there's 5 different priorities. Priority number 5 may be the highest for my company. For your company, it may be priority level 1. That's your discretion. Now, creating ticket handler groups. I'm going to go ahead and add a new group. A lot of the times when I'm creating tickets, I have to set multiple people responsible or as the technician. I can accomplish the same thing by creating a ticket group. For example, the group name may be network team. Say it's a level 5 group. I'm going to go ahead and submit this, and then it'll ask me for users in the system that I'd like to add to this group. So for my network team, the administrator and Joe Bob will be my network team members. So when I'm creating a ticket, as I'll do now, navigating to that test account that we created earlier, navigating to the ticket tab on this test account, I'm going to go ahead and add a new ticket. The different types this may be were the ones that we just created. Maybe an email issue, internet issue, so I'll select the correct type and category. Status is open. Priority 3. Summary of ticket, network issue. Now, when I want to send this to my network team, I'll have to set them as responsible, Joe Bob's responsible, and the administrator is the technician, but I may have multiple members in these groups, so that's why we are creating the groups. Again, whether it be billing or network, if I'd like to set the network team responsible, that way as soon as I submit this ticket, everybody in that team will be updated and notified. So it's a good way to get information out to multiple users in a very quick amount of time. So I can go ahead and submit that. Now the ticket update was sent to everybody. Now we do have functionality tied in with the customer portal for the customers to create tickets as well. Touching on that here. Configuring the customer portal, which leads me, I guess, to the customer portal. Each company has different preferences when it comes to the information that you would like to make available to your customers. You as the administrator will have the ability to enable and disable different sections of the customer portal. Again, config tab, that seems to be a running theme here of where we're going to make these changes. Locating the customer portal. There's different information I can turn on and off here. For example, I may not want my customers to be able to see the data usage tab. I'll go ahead and turn that off. Speed test equipment, we can actually turn off showing the customer their service speeds here as well. Billing, we're going to allow the customer to make a payment through the portal, add new payment methods. Maximum payment will allow through the portal. This would probably be a protection for the customer so they don't actually accidentally add an extra zero to that $40 plan. Hide billing for guarantor accounts, we can make those changes. Allow users to make payments. In most cases we want that to yes. And contact us, so we give them the ability to contact us, whether it be in ticket or email. And then if it is a ticket, we want those ticket updates to be sent to one user in our system. So we can say the responsible user for tickets made in the portal will be the admin. And maybe we add the network team as a group. Email responsible user. Yes, so as soon as the as soon as the ticket is submitted, we will send an email to that responsible user. So jumping into the test account, I'd like to see the portal information, just see what my settings have done and what changes I've made. So I go to the contact section of John Smith's account, and on the right I do have a tab that will let me jump in the portal. So the information we can see here is basically the information that we had defined on the internet service and made available through that configuration section. So data usage, whether it be the current month or historical overview. Total usage on the account. If they do have a penalty tied to their service, we will tell them you have used 0 gig out of X. If you exceed your allotted data transfer, you will be charged. If not, then this section will not appear. And they can opt in for email reports. Speed tests, we will run a speed test back to the billing server. Equipment, you may allow that your customers be given the ability to update their equipment from the portal. Only issue is if they are entering the wrong MAC address, now they will not be able to get online and now they're calling you. Or a situation like we run into where I'd say about 75% of our customers have no idea what a MAC address is, so that could lead to more calls and more questions. So we disable this, it's your preference. Customer has the ability to update their contact information, password as well. And then the billing section. So if a customer was redirected, they will log in, see their billing tab, see that they are delinquent and they owe a balance. In this case, we are active. We can add new payment method, make a payment. And then hopefully we've cut down on some of those billing calls that come into you by showing this information to the customers, our recent payments and charges. Instead of them calling you and questioning the $149 charge, they can log into the portal and see exactly what that was for. We also store past invoices on the account, so if the customers want to get access to those invoices, now they have it. What really brought me here, though, would be the ticketing section, which we were talking about earlier. So the customers do have the ability to create tickets from the portal. May not be an emergency, so they just want to see what your SMTP server settings are. A question that they don't need an immediate answer to, they submit a ticket and then wait for an answer. Here we have 3 tickets created already. I'm going to go ahead and select one of them. So I had staged this for earlier. Perfect. So as you can see, the customer had sent in a request for help. Not very descriptive, but it was a request. And then we replied with what is the issue. So reason I'm showing you this, just to see you, or to show you what the customer can see when they submit these tickets. Next section will be the billing section. So the billing tab will be the last portion we visit today. Here we will go over automatic and manual accounting sections. So we'll show you a few tricks you can use when you're in the billing section. We will go over questions after we're done. Okay, going back to the administrative portal. I'm going to navigate back to my test account. We'll jump in the billing section. As many of you are aware, you do spend some time in the overview and billing tabs, not as much in the individual service inventory ticket sections. So what we're able to see when we navigate to the billing tab is balance on the account, some of that information we had created when we created the account, bill due by days, grace periods, temporary grace periods. So for example, good point to point out here, temporary grace date. You may have a customer that calls in and says, you know, I can't pay you today, but I can pay you in 3 days. Is there anything you can do for me? If you set a hard grace period, then you'll have to remember to set them back to 10 days, which is something we want to automate for you. So what we can do is we can set a temporary grace period. So we'll extend their grace period 3 more days, but this is not changing the hard grace period. So after 3 days it'll expire, and the customer's grace period will be set back to 10. We define tax zones and invoice preferences here as well. Credit card and bank accounts. So this would just be the process of adding those credit card and bank accounts, which many of you are aware. We'll show you usage since last build cycle day, and then you can opt the customer in for email reports from the administrative portal as well. Guarantor and guarantee. We may have a section dedicated to going over this in depth, but basically it's a way for you to store multiple accounts on one invoice. So if you have a company you service in your area that has 3 buildings, you'll have 3 separate accounts for that customer, and they may want one invoice. So we can set 1 master account and then 2 guarantee accounts. That way charges will flow up to that guarantor account, thus giving us 1 invoice. If any of you have questions on guarantor or would like to learn more about this, go ahead and send your questions into support@powercode.com. We may have a training session focused purely on this, but it would be from your requests. And then referral information. So you may be issuing referral discounts or just purely tracking that information. So we'd enter referrals in this section here. And then add new schedule status events. So this is one I often hear from customers that they don't know about or they're not utilizing fully. So I'll touch on this a bit. So the add new schedule status event. In Wisconsin here we have snowbirds that like to leave as soon as it gets cold outside, and they like to come back in summer. So a customer calls me and they say, hello Jacob, I'm calling to tell you that I am leaving on a specific date. We'll say October 1st, and I'll be back February 1st. So in that regard, I'd like to shut their account off to not active, but I can also set them to active on February 1st without ever putting it on a schedule, without having to field that call. It's just going to happen through Powercode. So for example, I would change the status to not active. It's going to happen once, and then I can say why. Snowbird, customer called me, told me they were leaving, they'll be back February. Go ahead and save this. So now we're turning them off automatically on October 1st, but we need the ability to turn them on too, because I don't want to have to worry about that later. So event date, we'll say February 1st, I want this customer to switch to active. That's the date they told me they're coming back, and why. Snowbird is coming back. Go ahead and save that. So now immediately on October 1st, this account will go into not active status. On February 1st, it will automatically be activated. Also, you may field those calls where customers call in and say, hey, I've found a different provider. I'd like to close my account with you. So what we'll do is we'll allow them to have internet access through the end of the month. We were not prorating anything. If you'd like to, you can shut them off right away and then prorate. Otherwise, we can close the account on the next bill day. So this is going to close the account an hour before billing runs on the next day that billing is set to run. Recent activities. This section will show you anything that's been done since the last invoice was generated. So for example, if a payment was made or we've had new charges, maybe we've had a service call charge added to the account, you will see all that information in recent activities. As soon as the bill cycle runs around the next month, comes around the next month, it will take all the items in recent activities and post it to the next invoice. While those items are in recent activities, though, we can generate quick invoices for specific items or payment receipts. Right now we're giving you the ability to generate this receipt. You'll have to save it to PDF, print it off, and then maybe you'll email it out to the customer. In the future we are going to be giving you the ability to simply click email payment receipt, and we have been discussing automatic receipts going out to the customers. Again, if you see any features you'd like in here, just submit them. Your feedback is much appreciated. Accounting. So this is the manual accounting section. In the perfect world, everybody's going to pay their balance on the bill cycle day. We're not going to have any delinquent customers. We're never going to have to issue refunds, but we all know that's not the case. So we do give you the ability to submit credit card payments or checking account payments. Submit cash and check payments here. So if somebody sends you a check, you still would need to enter that information into Powercode. Submit custom credits, showing you what that looks like here. Description of the credit, service issues, and then the amount. And then you can also post-date these credits and charges. And then how you're classifying it. This is purely for your financial reports. Go ahead and submit OK. Similar to how the credit looks, it would be the same way in creating a charge, except it would have different effects. Obviously, it would be a charge on the account. We can also submit one-time charges through the system here. So this would be your installation charges, your equipment charges, for example, daily rate. I may have a shipping charge, for example, that changes all the time. So I don't want to enter that shipping charge into Powercode 20 times. I'd like to enter one, and then, for example, say this daily rate is my shipping charge. I can select Edit directly to the right of the activity, and then just change the dollar amount. Go ahead and submit OK. And now we just updated that price without having to create its own individual service. We can also submit refunds. So with your payment gateway processor, you will have an extra window here. It'll say payments, and it'll show you responses from your gateway. So whether it was successful or failed, and why. From that payment section on the right-hand side, we do have the ability to refund through your payment gateway. So if a customer needed a refund, we would simply click the refund link. If they refunded you out, or you refunded them out of Powercode, cutting them a check or something of that nature, we would need to submit the bounce check or refund through this section, the manual accounting. It won't actually have any functionality with putting the money back on the card, but it will show, it will reflect the refund in Powercode. And then past invoices. We are storing all invoices on the account from conception. And you can email past invoice to the customer from here as well. Question I get a lot of the time is, how do I generate my own invoice or add an invoice? So if we select the View Details section, we will see every debit and credit on the account since conception. On the lower right-hand side, hidden here, we do have the ability to add an invoice. Select the date that we'd like to add the invoice for, and then submit OK. So we may charge them an installation charge. We want to get a statement out to them. So we'll just generate a new invoice, and then we can email that out to the customer, reflecting the installation charges. And that appears to conclude the first training session. If there's anything you'd like to be changed during the intro section, we will be doing the intro every week, just to give new customers the ability to see what Powercode does, what it looks like, general principles of what it is. And then if you hire any new employees, I think it's good to have this Intro to Powercode training. So we'll be doing this every week. If you have any suggestions, things you'd like to see different, things you'd like to see in more depth during this intro section, please email those into support@powercode.com. We will look at your suggestions and take them seriously. So any feedback would be much appreciated. So if you do, again, have any questions, please email those into support@powercode.com. This concludes our training. Thank you very much for attending. Have a good day.